Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Dethroning Your Inner Critic YouTube channel. So today I want to talk about the 4 steps to make all of your relationships healthier. Now, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Joanna Kleinman, licensed psychotherapist, creator of the Mind Method, and the best-selling author of the book, Dethroning Your Inner Critic, the 4-step journey from self-doubt to self-empowerment. And I also host the Dethroning Your Inner Critic podcast. So all of the work that I do is designed to teach people how to think, okay? Because if we're not understanding how to master our minds, then we're essentially living on autopilot with beliefs about ourselves and life that actually begin when we're about 4 to 6 years old. Now, that's a very scary thought. So this YouTube channel and my book and my podcast and my programs are not only about how to make your life better, okay? It's about how to make everyone's life better. So I want to be a part of building a culture where we know how to create conscious and intentional thoughts and beliefs, because I believe that without understanding how to think in a way that gives us access to our best selves, our relationships with everyone can become complicated, okay? So I'm not just talking about relationships with other people here, okay? Because all of our relationships begin with the most important relationship, which is the one with ourselves. So I believe we've been living in a very damaged culture that perpetuates judgment and separateness and comparison and egocentric thinking. So one of the most important educations that we can have that actually has the potential to change the world we're living in is to teach people how to think starting at a young age, how to think about themselves, how to think about their life, how to think when conflicts arise, or if life doesn't go the way that you want or expect it to. And not only is there no education about this, but our culture actually perpetuates and teaches people to never feel good enough. So think about it, right? We get a gold star for getting it right? We need to get it right to get the right grade. Even our parents are proud of us when we do a good job or we get it right. So we live in a culture of, if my life doesn't look the way it's supposed to, I'm just not good enough. And that translates into relationships, right? It translates into the need to show why I'm right and you're wrong, so that you can think the right way or act the right way towards me, right? That's what we essentially all want, okay? So not only are we not taught how to think, we're not taught how to listen, okay? Because conflicts in relationships arise when either one or both people don't feel heard and understood, right? How many of you, when you're having a disagreement in a relationship, you're more interested in preparing your points or your side of the story so that you can show the other person why you're right and they're wrong? Now, I'm totally guilty of this too when my inner critic is ruling my mind, okay? So when you have a mind that's conditioned to believe that your worthiness and value comes from other people liking you, loving you, never judging you, or from your accomplishments, needing other people to see your accomplishments, your degrees, your money, your things that you own, your looks, right? This is actually an assault on ourselves. So we're so hyper-focused on ourselves, and many of our thoughts are really about us, okay? Even if you think they're not. So even when our thoughts are about somebody else, if we're triggered, it usually goes back to us, right? When my inner critic is ruling my mind, many of my thoughts are about wanting to fix or change something. Maybe it could be about myself, some part of my life, or some part of someone else. Okay. So these thoughts make us tense, frustrated, and dissatisfied, even sometimes downright angry. Right. Now, if I didn't have the tools that I developed and use every day to unhook myself from my automatic thoughts, I would automatically and unconsciously act out my thoughts onto other people. And that's the heart of problems in relationships. Okay. We actually live in an interconnected world, right? So in other words, the way I speak to myself, is going to impact the way I speak to you. And the way I speak to you is going to impact the way you speak to yourself, and maybe the way you speak to someone else. It's a ripple effect. And because most of us have no idea that we're actually separate from our inner critic mind, most people act out on other people. I've done it. I'm sure you've done it. I thank God every day for the work that I do, because it's changed the course of my life. It's changed the course of my relationships, because I know the difference between me and my inner critic. So when I'm experiencing anxiety, anger, overwhelm, guilt, resentment, frustration, I know that those feelings are coming from my own automatic inner critic thoughts, right? Now, for those of you that know the mind method, that's the I step of the mind method. Investigate your indication signs. Those are my indication signs, my blinking red lights, that when I feel that way, that's my cue to get curious, to ask myself the fundamental question, why is this bothering me so much? And then to get curious about the answer. And watch my inner critic say things like, this person should not be that way. They should be this way. Or I should not be that way, right? I should be another way, right? And I know anytime I say should, that's my inner critic's attachment to her ideal picture, okay? And when her ideal picture isn't met, my inner critic goes crazy. Okay. And then she immediately tries to find a solution to make either me or someone else or some part of my life become the way it should be. And that is a life of chronic stress, dissatisfaction, and unhappiness, which is the way that a lot of people live, which is heartbreaking, because that's all about judgment. And our inner critic loves to judge. Comparison is judgment. Not feeling good enough is judgment. Trying to fix or change someone else's judgment. Trying to fix or change yourself in order to be good enough. Total judgment. So change, right, from a place of self-love and self-compassion is totally different. When you're growing, but you already know how to cultivate that self-love and self-compassion, that requires shifting from judgment to curiosity and wonder. So what would it be like if we were taught to shift from judgment to curiosity and wonder? Right? Isn't that all we really want from other people? If we're upset, don't we want to be curious about why we're upset instead of defending their position? So when you're in an argument or conflict with someone, can you get curious about what pain is really being triggered in them and within yourself? So if you're currently struggling in a relationship, here are 4 steps that have the power to transform your relationship. So the first step is to get connected to what your authentic self really wants in this relationship. Right? So now this means that you pick a time to talk to this person, or maybe to talk to yourself, when neither of you are upset or triggered. Okay? Because if you try and deal with conflicts when you're upset, your inner critic is in control, and you're going to force your anger, your judgment, your opinion, and your righteousness when you're triggered. Okay? It'll be from a place of trying to win, trying to fix or change or control. So you have to first get in touch with, what are your higher commitments in this conversation that you're about to have? Okay. Otherwise, you're just gone. You're on autopilot, and your inner critic is just trying to push her agenda, which is usually, I want you to think and feel and act in a way that's going to make me feel good. Okay. Step 2. Listen for the other person's pain. Listen from curiosity. Repeat back to them what they have to say until they feel really heard and understood by you. In other words, find their inner critic. What are they really upset about? See, whenever someone is having a strong reaction, they're never reacting to what they think they're reacting to. So get curious. Is there more about that? Get curious about what they're really upset about and stop listening for that break in the conversation so that your inner critic can just win her argument. Okay? Because when people feel seen and heard by you, very often they will soften their defenses. Okay. So summarize all of what you're hearing from them so that you can fully understand where someone else's pain is being triggered. Step 3, get present. What do you want to have happen in this conversation? Okay. You have an inner world with its own automatic inner critic, just like the other person does. So if your inner critic is arguing with their inner critic, then no one wins. Okay. That person is really trying to tell you something. They're trying to tell you how they're feeling on a deeper level. So are you listening for that? Okay. So slowing down and becoming present for what you really want to have happen and what you really want to create in this relationship. Step 4, create safety in the relationship. So are you creating an environment in the relationship where that other person feels emotionally safe, right? Are they trying to solve conflict with defensiveness? Now, if they're defensive, they don't feel safe. So this is where you need to get curious and practice the first step of the mind method, which is the M step, meet your inner critic. So you can ask yourself, where did my automatic inner critic mind, where did my automatic thoughts and beliefs play a role in creating their defensiveness? So our inner critic's only agenda is, I have this problem. The problem is outside of myself. It's about you. And I need for you to change so that I can feel better. So with this agenda, there's no intimacy, there's no joy. And the irony is that we're all starving for this. And we think that the path to intimacy and joy is telling someone else that they're wrong. And therefore, what they need to do to fix or change so that we can feel more intimacy and joy, right? It's actually ludicrous. And yet this is how most people operate in relationship. And the other ludicrous belief that our culture perpetuates is that a good relationship should just be effortless and easy. There should be no conflicts. No one should get triggered. So the moment that we find ourselves triggered, our inner critic says, ooh, that's a problem. That shouldn't be happening, which is complete BS, right? So we need to find space and room and compassion for our humanness. We're all spiritual beings having a human experience, okay? This means that we're all flawed. We're all imperfect. We make mistakes. We get triggered. We have sides of ourselves that are not pretty, okay? So can you make room for your humanness? And most importantly, can you make room for other people's humanness? Okay. Now, this does not mean that you don't set boundaries and you don't say what isn't acceptable. Okay. So the most important thing in a relationship is feeling safe and loved. And so therefore to examine who you're being when you elicit the best in others. Okay. Because our inner critic makes us exhibit the worst side of ourselves. And that's all we all want, is to be right, seen, heard, understood, valued. Okay. So if you're interested and curious to hear the deeper pain in someone else, that makes that other person feel seen and heard. And when that person feels seen and heard, they're more willing to examine themselves and take responsibility for their own reactivity. Now, by the way, I am only talking about making room for humanness with healthy humans. Okay. So what I'm saying does not work. Okay. It does not apply when you're in a relationship with someone who has a personality disorder, like narcissism or borderline personality disorder or explosive personality disorder. Okay. So if you need to walk on eggshells and you lose yourself trying to make a relationship work, you may be in an unworkable relationship. That's a whole different video. Okay. But that might be indicative that your inner critic is ruling your choice of relationships, right? You might be holding on to a toxic relationship because of some deeper fear of unworthiness. Okay. But with healthy humans, the bottom line is cultivating a loving and connected relationship takes awareness, and emotional injuries are always from your automatic inner critic. Okay. Connection takes something. We have to actually counteract our biology, right? Our inner critic stems from a primitive brain that senses danger and then tries to eliminate danger, right? So if your inner critic is ruling your relationships, right, you might not be creating safety in that other person. You might feel like you're in danger. Okay. So I believe that the most powerful life that we can all live is when we know the difference between who we really are and our inner critic mind. Okay. So getting so intimately familiar with that difference, right? Such that you know when your inner critic is in control of your relationships, you know how to unhook from your inner critic and step into a very different, rewired mind with very new thoughts that are actually in line with your higher commitment to be loving and connected, even when you're upset or frustrated. Okay. So many people take their love away when their inner critic is in control. They feel righteous and justified in their anger and frustration. And they believe, well, if you would just start doing this or stop doing this, right, then I'll be loving. Okay. That's your inner critic doing the blame thing and then not taking ownership of your own thoughts and emotions and behaviors, and then trying to control other people so that you can feel the way you want to feel. So your relationships determine the quality of your life. And the most important relationship that you have is with yourself. So when you stop looking for other people to determine your worth, you unhook from your inner critic's need for approval and acceptance. You might prefer it, but you don't need it. So you don't get so triggered when someone else has a judgment or opinion of you. You can allow them to have their opinion, their judgment, their behavior, and you don't lose sight of knowing that you know you're good enough, even if someone else is frustrated or disappointed or has a judgment. And we're never getting rid of our inner critic. So understanding the difference between you and your inner critic is a game changer. Okay. Our society would be so much better if people knew how to think in a way where they're not giving their power over to other people to determine their worthiness. Okay. There'd be a lot less emotional pain, a lot less acting out on people, a lot healthier humans if we knew how to intentionally think. So if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and thank you for watching.